On October 18, 2024, Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas in Gaza, met his end. The circumstances of his death were shrouded in the chaos of the ongoing conflict. Reports emerged that he was targeted and killed in an Israeli airstrike. The strike aimed to dismantle the Hamas leadership structure and cripple its ability to wage war. Sinwar's death was a significant blow to the organization he had commanded with an iron fist. Details surrounding his final moments remained scarce. Was he caught off guard, or did he die defiant, leading his men? The answer, lost in the rubble and the fog of war, may never be fully known. His body was recovered from the wreckage, bearing the unmistakable marks of conflict. The world waited with bated breath to see how Hamas would react to the loss of their leader. The impact of his death was immediately felt. Hamas, now reeling from the loss of its leader, faced internal power struggles. The organization was thrust into uncertainty, its future course unclear. Sinwar's demise marked a turning point in the conflict, the ramifications of which were only beginning to unfold. Dr. Chen Kugel, a renowned forensic pathologist, was tasked with conducting Sinwar's autopsy. Known for his meticulous attention to detail and vast experience in forensic pathology, Dr. Kugel approached the task with a sense of duty and precision. The procedure, conducted under tight security, aimed to determine the exact cause of death and glean any other information that might be helpful to Israeli intelligence. The high level of security underscored the significance of the autopsy, as Sinwar was a high-profile figure whose death had far-reaching implications. The findings, however, would reveal a truth more shocking than anyone could have anticipated. As Dr. Kugel delved deeper into the examination, he uncovered details that would challenge existing narratives and assumptions. The autopsy confirmed that Sinwar died from a gunshot wound to the head. This was a critical piece of information, as it provided a clear cause of death and ruled out other possibilities such as poisoning or natural causes. The trajectory and caliber of the bullet pointed to a close-range execution-style killing. This detail suggested a level of intimacy and intent that was chilling, indicating that the perpetrator was in close proximity to Sinwar at the time of the shooting. This was not the act of a distant missile strike but a calculated and personal assassination. The nature of the killing raised questions about who had the access and opportunity to carry out such an act and what their motivations might have been. The surprise came from an additional discovery. Sinwar's body showed signs of remarkable health despite years of living under siege conditions. His physical condition was unexpectedly robust, contradicting the image of a leader weakened by years of hardship. This revelation contradicted the prevailing narrative of Hamas leaders hiding in decrepit tunnels, their health failing under the pressure. Instead, it painted a picture of resilience and adaptability, suggesting that Sinwar and possibly other leaders had found ways to maintain their health despite the challenging environment. The autopsy painted a different picture, one of resilience and defiance even in the face of overwhelming odds. Sinwar's physical condition was a testament to his ability to endure and thrive under extreme conditions, a quality that likely contributed to his leadership role. This unexpected finding had profound implications for Israel's understanding of its enemy. It suggested that Hamas leaders were not as vulnerable as previously thought, and that their ability to withstand adversity was greater than anticipated. It challenged their assumptions about Hamas's capabilities and the conditions under which its leaders operated. The new information necessitated a re-evaluation of strategies and tactics, as the resilience of Hamas leaders meant that they could potentially sustain their operations longer than expected. The autopsy report, initially intended to provide closure, had instead opened a Pandora's box of questions. Each new piece of information led to further inquiries, complicating the narrative and leaving Israeli intelligence with more questions than answers. Sinwar's death sent shockwaves through the political landscapes of both Gaza and Israel. The sudden and unexpected demise of such a pivotal figure left both regions grappling with the immediate and long-term consequences. Sinwar, who had been a central figure in Hamas, was not just a leader, but a symbol of resistance and defiance against Israeli policies. His death created a vacuum that many feared could lead to chaos and further violence. In Gaza, a power vacuum emerged, with various factions within Hamas vying for control. The internal struggle for leadership was not just about who would take the helm, but also about the future direction of the organization. Would the new leader continue Sinwar's hardline stance, or would there be a shift towards a more moderate approach? The uncertainty created a tense atmosphere, with different factions preparing for potential confrontations. The potential for increased instability and infighting loomed large, threatening to further escalate the already volatile situation. The streets of Gaza saw an uptick in protests and clashes as people voiced their fears and frustrations. The possibility of a civil conflict within Gaza itself became a real concern, with the risk of further destabilizing the region. Israel, too, grappled with the implications of Sinwar's death. The Israeli government and military had to reassess their strategies and prepare for potential retaliatory actions from Hamas or other militant groups. The death of such a high-profile figure could provoke a wave of violence, and Israel had to be ready for any eventuality. While his demise was seen as a strategic victory, it also introduced a new element of uncertainty. The Israeli leadership had to consider the broader implications of this event. Would it lead to a temporary lull in hostilities, or would it ignite a new cycle of violence? The uncertainty weighed heavily on the minds of Israeli officials and citizens alike. With Sinwar gone, the question arose: who would take his place, and would they be more open to negotiation, or even more radical? The leadership transition within Hamas was not just a matter of internal politics, but had significant implications for the broader Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The new leader's stance could either pave the way for renewed peace talks or lead to an escalation in hostilities. The Israeli government, led by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, faced mounting pressure to capitalize on the situation. There were calls from various quarters to take decisive action against Hamas, leveraging the current disarray within the organization. Netanyahu and his advisors had to weigh the potential benefits of a military campaign against the risks of further destabilizing the region. Some advocated for a swift and decisive military campaign to crush Hamas once and for all. They argued that this was a unique opportunity to weaken the organization and restore a semblance of peace and security. However, such a move was fraught with risks, including the potential for significant civilian casualties and international condemnation. Others urged caution, fearing that such an approach would only lead to further bloodshed and complicate the already dire humanitarian situation in Gaza. The region was already suffering from severe shortages of basic necessities, and an intensified conflict would exacerbate the suffering of ordinary people. Humanitarian organizations called for restraint and a focus on dialogue and negotiation. The political landscape was in flux, the future uncertain. Both Gaza and Israel were at a crossroads, with the potential for significant changes in their political and social dynamics. The death of Sinwar had set off a chain reaction, the outcomes of which were still unfolding. The death of Sinwar, while a significant event, had not brought the conflict any closer to resolution. Instead, it had added another layer of complexity to an already intricate and deeply rooted conflict. The immediate aftermath saw increased tensions and uncertainty, with both sides bracing for what might come next. Instead, it had ushered in a new era of uncertainty and volatility, with the potential for both escalation and perhaps a new path toward peace. The international community watched closely, hoping that this moment of upheaval could eventually lead to a breakthrough in one of the world's most enduring conflicts. The future remained unwritten, with both danger and opportunity lying ahead. At the heart of the conflict lay a humanitarian crisis: the fate of over 100 Israeli hostages held captive by Hamas in Gaza. These hostages, a mix of civilians and soldiers, were taken during a series of violent confrontations that have left the region in turmoil. Families in Israel are left in a state of perpetual anxiety, their lives upended by the uncertainty of their loved ones' fates. The international community watches closely, with humanitarian organizations calling for their immediate release, emphasizing the severe psychological and physical toll on the captives. Sinwar's death added another layer of complexity to an already dire situation. As one of Hamas's key leaders, his demise has created a power vacuum, leading to increased instability within the organization. This instability has had a ripple effect, exacerbating the already fragile situation in Gaza. The destruction from ongoing military operations has left many areas in ruins, further complicating efforts to negotiate and provide aid. With the leadership structure of Hamas in disarray, the lines of communication needed to negotiate their release became even more blurred. The internal chaos has made it difficult for mediators to identify who holds the real power and who can make decisions regarding the hostages. This disarray has led to missed opportunities for dialogue and has prolonged the suffering of those held captive. Hopes for a swift resolution dimmed as the power struggle within Hamas intensified. Different factions within the organization vie for control, each with its own agenda and vision for the future. This internal conflict has not only hindered negotiations but has also led to sporadic outbreaks of violence, further endangering the lives of the hostages and the civilian population in Gaza. Each faction saw the hostages as valuable bargaining chips, their release contingent on concessions from Israel. These demands range from the release of Palestinian prisoners to the easing of blockades and restrictions on Gaza. The hostages have become pawns in a larger political game, their lives used to leverage political gains. This has made the situation even more complex, as each side tries to outmaneuver the other. The hostages, caught in the middle of this deadly game of political chess, faced an increasingly uncertain future. Their conditions are unknown, and their families are left to imagine the worst. The psychological trauma for both the hostages and their families is immense, with each passing day adding to their despair. The international community continues to call for their release, but the path to freedom remains fraught with obstacles. The Israeli public, desperate for their loved ones' safe return, grew increasingly impatient with the lack of progress. Vigils and rallies are held regularly, with people coming together to show solidarity and to pressure the government to take more decisive action. The emotional toll on the families is palpable, their grief and frustration mirrored in the eyes of the nation. Protests erupted in Tel Aviv and other cities, demanding that the government prioritize the hostages' release. These demonstrations have grown in size and intensity, reflecting the public's mounting frustration. Signs and banners call for immediate action, and chants echo through the streets, urging the government to do whatever it takes to bring the hostages home. The pressure on the government is immense, with every delay seen as a failure to protect its citizens. The pressure on Prime Minister Netanyahu to secure their freedom mounted, further complicating the already delicate political situation. His administration faces criticism from all sides, with opposition parties and the public alike demanding swift and effective action. The political stakes are high, and every decision is scrutinized, adding to the already intense pressure on the Israeli leadership. The hostage crisis became a microcosm of the larger conflict, highlighting the human cost of the ongoing violence. The suffering of the hostages and their families is a stark reminder of the broader humanitarian crisis affecting countless civilians in the region. The conflict has left deep scars, with homes destroyed, lives lost, and communities torn apart. The need for a resolution that addresses these human costs is more urgent than ever. Each day that passed without their release served as a stark reminder of the fragility of peace and the urgent need for a resolution that prioritized the lives of innocent civilians. The international community continues to call for an end to the violence and for a negotiated settlement that ensures the safety and dignity of all those affected. The hostages' plight underscores the broader need for a lasting peace that can bring stability and hope to a region long plagued by conflict.